Let's dive right into this chilling explainer. We're stepping straight into the quiet, eerie halls of St. Mary's Sacred Heart Church over in Kolkata, India. Normally, this place serves as a peaceful hostel for young women who are dedicating their entire lives to faith. But on the last Saturday of March, things took a deeply unsettling turn. A 22-year-old woman named Maria arrived, and she brought something incredibly dark with her. She was introduced simply as a special child of God, but right off the bat, she completely refused to make eye contact with anyone. Her face was just this blank canvas of profound, heavy sadness, and she immediately retreated straight into the shadows of her room.
You know that immediate creeping dread you get when something is just off? Well, her fellow nun Ruma felt it instantly. She suspected right away that Maria was hiding a deeply disturbing secret, and while the other nuns tried to just brush it off as her being shy or tired, Ruma literally couldn't shake the feeling. Maria's completely flat expression and those deeply sunken eyes planted the seed of absolute terror in the hostel on her very first night.
Now, the horror didn't kick off with some massive explosion of paranormal activity. Actually, it began with a really subtle, chilling anomaly. The very next morning, during a quiet, pin-drop silent prayer session, Ruma noticed Maria standing way at the back, just muttering to herself. So Ruma quietly steps a bit closer to see what's going on, but she didn't hear a 22-year-old woman's voice. Instead, Maria was speaking in this terrifying, overlapping male voice. It sounded like she was actively trying to escape the holy words surrounding her. Later that night, Ruma's curiosity gets the better of her, and the horror escalates so fast. She waits until everyone is asleep and peeks into Maria's window, and she witnesses an absolutely impossible sight. Maria wasn't just sitting there. Her body was severely contorted, twisted backward, almost like a discarded rubber doll. Then Maria violently snaps her neck to look right at the window. Ruma saw these deep black pits where her eyes should be, and teeth that were as pitch black as burning coal. Obviously, Ruma let out a blood-curdling scream and just collapsed right there, gasping for air, which instantly woke up the rest of the convent. Okay, so this is the exact moment the entity fully takes control. Mother Agnes hears the scream, rushes over, finds Ruma gasping on the floor, and grabs a holy cross before stepping into Maria's room. But as she gets closer, the cross inexplicably drops right out of her hands. Maria's pupils turn completely black. Her fingers bend backward with a sickening snap, and she drops down to the floor. Then, lunging like a wild beast, she violently tears the flesh right off Mother Agnes's hand, just holding it in her mouth while growling. It's absolutely horrifying.
Everything instantly devolves into pure chaos. Father Steve has to rush in, physically pull Mother Agnes to safety, and lock Maria inside the room. The next morning, they decide to try a desperate intervention. With the other nuns chanting in the background, Father Steve walks in with holy water. But here's the crazy part. When he sprays her, it doesn't calm her down at all. It scorches her skin like literal acid, leaving these horrific blisters the second it makes impact. The reaction is so violent that Maria just collapses, looking incredibly weak, and for a moment it seems like she might actually be freed from the entity's grip. And for 2 days, there's this eerie calm. Maria simply lies in bed. Finally, she asks for some water. Believing the holy water actually did the trick, Mother Agnes carefully offers her some food. But nope, the nightmare was definitely not over. Maria devolves instantly. She starts shoving food into her mouth with her bare hands, eating like a starved wild animal. Then her eyes change again, and she begins speaking fluently in multiple unknown languages, which, for a girl raised in an orphanage, is an absolute impossibility. The entity hadn't left at all. It was still right there. Realizing they are completely out of their depth, they finally call in a specialist. Father Edmund arrives to initiate a super intense midnight exorcism, and he goes in with a meticulous step-by-step plan. First, they bind Maria securely to a heavy wooden chair. Then, they create a protective barrier completely surrounding her with holy crosses and lit candles. Once that's set, Father Edmund initiates a continuous barrage of holy water and begins reciting the prayers of exorcism. But the exorcism quickly spirals way out of control. As Father Edmund recites the prayers, Maria's eyes go completely dark, and she gets this utterly sinister smile. The sounds in that room turn horrifying. She starts rapidly switching between the gentle, crying voice of a tiny baby and then right into the booming, thunderous voice of a grown man. Then Maria lets out a single, deafening shriek, and unseen forces blow out every single candle in the room simultaneously. The floorboards between the holy crosses and Maria literally begin to crack and split wide open under the sheer pressure of this dark energy. just as Maria's body violently stiffens, we hit a massive, shocking twist. The demonic force leaps over and possesses Mother Agnes herself, right there, in the middle of the ritual. Mother Agnes's eyes turn pitch black, and completely against her will, the entity forces her to confess a horrifying secret from exactly 1 year ago. She starts crying out, begging for mercy, and says she's going to reveal absolutely everything about how this tragedy actually started. Through this possessed confession, a stark and really disturbing contrast comes to light. It turns out Maria never actually wanted to be a nun. She was just a joyful girl who sang at the city church, and she was hoping for a normal, happy marriage. But while she was there, she caught the eye of Father Neil. Now publicly, Neil's persona was saintly and highly respected, but privately, he completely broke his vows to pursue a forbidden romance with Maria. He wasn't a saint at all. He was a selfish, desperate man who was willing to commit unimaginable atrocities just to protect his pristine reputation. So, we learn that Maria ended up becoming 4 months pregnant, which completely shattered Father Neil's hidden little world. He knew a scandal like that would instantly destroy the church's reputation, not to mention his own comfortable life. But Maria stubbornly insisted on bringing her child into the world. So, in a desperate and horrific bid to hide his sins, a totally panicked Father Neil conspired with Mother Agnes to eliminate this threat permanently. Let's walk through exactly how this monstrous betrayal unfolded, because the timeline is just chilling. On the night of a terrible storm, Neil and Agnes brought in a complicit nurse. Right at midnight, they secretly administered medication to forcefully induce premature labor, which severely risked Maria's life. By 2 a.m., amidst this raging storm, Maria gave birth. While she was slipping in and out of delirium, they lied and told her the baby was stillborn. But the actual, horrifying truth? Father Neil and Mother Agnes took Maria's living, breathing newborn, carried it out into the storm, and secretly buried the baby alive in the church graveyard. Maria was utterly broken by Neil's betrayal and the lie about her baby's death. And worse, she had zero proof to expose this supposedly saintly priest. Driven absolutely mad by grief, she spent her nights just weeping in that very graveyard. By crying out for her lost child night after night in a place of the dead, her immense sorrow basically acted as a beacon. She unknowingly left the door wide open, inviting vengeful spirits, including the tormented soul of her own murdered newborn, to come in and possess her empty, broken shell. So, snapping back to the present day and the exorcism, we realize the vengeful entity inside Maria isn't just some random demon. It's a force actively seeking justice. Father Edmund tries to intensify his prayers to fight it, but the entity just screams for him to stop. And to prove its immense power, the entity forces Maria to violently twist her own arm in the completely wrong direction, snapping the bone with a sickening crack. The demon explicitly refuses to leave until the guilty party is brought forward. It demands that Father Neil be brought into the room right now. Father Neil is summoned, and he rushes into the room. The second Maria sees him, she lets out this terrifying, booming laugh, while Neil just cowers behind Mother Agnes. Father Edmund frantically starts throwing holy water, but Maria simply tilts her head up, and instantly, both Father Neil and Mother Agnes levitate high into the air. Speaking in that chilling, overlapping voice, Maria utters a terrifying final judgment. One sin, one punishment. And suddenly, all the extinguished candles fly across the room and set the levitating bodies completely ablaze. Father Edmund is so stunned, the holy water just slips right from his trembling hands. The fire is completely unnatural. It simply cannot be put out. Father Neil and Mother Agnes are burned alive right there in midair as a brutal, supernatural retribution for their unthinkable crime. When they finally perish, Maria's neck droops, and the entity finally leaves her body. The aftermath of all this was just devastating. 2 people were dead, and Maria was left forever broken, barely surviving with her fading breath. And following this unprecedented, fatal exorcism, both of the corrupt churches were permanently shut down. As we wrap up this explainer, I want to leave you with a really unsettling question to ponder. Who were the actual monsters in this true tale of hypocrisy? I mean, yes, the demonic forces were terrifying and ultimately lethal, but it was the profound human evil, the selfish betrayal, and the calculated murder of an innocent child just to protect a reputation that shattered Maria's soul and literally dug the grave that invited those dark spirits in to begin with. Thank you for joining me, and I'll leave you to think about that dark reality.